Before this video starts, I just want to thank Sergeant Major Mario for getting all the footage for me of these two games. He's a really good guy, and we had a lot of fun playing these games, didn't you, Sergeant? I love you too. Let's get started. Hi guys, Mangarus here, and welcome to a new video. Now, if you couldn't tell from most of my videos, merely my most popular, you may already know that I'm a big fan of the Sonic series. I love the SatAM show, I love the games, and I'm hyped as fuck for Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces. So I thought while I'm waiting for those games to be released, I would take a look at other games in Sonic's library and compare them to see which ones stand on top as some of Sonic's best. This mini-series will be called Which is Better, where I take two games from the same franchise and compare them to see which one's the overall better game. So what better way to start off this mini-series than with two games that have the infamous reputation of being than Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic and the Black Knight. Now, the way I'll compare these two games is very much like how I review anime, that being through categories. These three categories will be the following: story, gameplay, and presentation. So once I review and compare the two games in each category, the winner of said category will get a point. And because there's three categories, there will always be a definite decider. So with the ground rules out of the way, let's start which is better with the two most okay games, Sonic and the Secret Rings and Sonic and the Black Knight. Let's go! The story of Secret Rings is as follows. Sonic is seen sleeping in what I believe is Tails' house, where he is waking up to a small voice calling for help. He goes and picks up what he thought was an alarm clock to turn it off, but instead picks up a ring, which I guess just appeared, it's never really explained, when BANG! Generic sidekick number 210 is released, that being in the form of Shara, the genie of the ring. Shara is in a panic as she tells Sonic that the world that she lives in is slowly being eaten away as they speak, by an evil genie named Eraser Jin. What kind of a name is that? Sonic, after giving a strange test to see if Shara isn't a hoax, Sonic, she appeared out of a ring, I think that's all the proof you need, agrees to go, jumps on a magic carpet, and flies straight into the Book of Arabian Nights. After a few tutorials that made me want to break my neck a second time, Sonic and Shara come face to face with Eraser himself. He's disgusted by Shara's quote-unquote betrayal and shoots a flame straight at her heart. But Sonic takes the bullet just in time, which turns out to be a dumb move as the flame is slowly eating at Sonic's soul. Eraser then tells Sonic to gather the 7 world rings, which is this game's version of Chaos Emerald, and give them to him before the flame burns out. If he doesn't, Sonic will die. That's kind of dark if you think about it. Alright, with Rings of Story done, on to Black Knight. Black Knight takes place in the world of Camelot, where a witch named Merlina... Is that her name? Yeah, I was right. Being chased down and surrounded by King Arthur's demon army. By the way, Arthur's evil in this story. Just roll with it. Merlina summons Sonic with the power of gibberish, and Sonic falls from the sky, creating the running gag of him falling flat on his face. After a quick encounter with Arthur and losing his loved ones, Sonic is obviously confused as this isn't the story he knows in his world. Merlina tells Sonic that Arthur became evil because of his scabbard, which basically fucked with his mind, and plans to take over the world with his army of Hellspawn. Sonic, with the help of a talking sword named Caliburn, defeat King Arthur and give the scabbard to Merlina, but then plot twist, and Merlina uses the scabbard to take over Camelot. Now it's up to Sonic and some of King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table to defeat Merlina and save Camelot, and possibly the world. Now, if you couldn't already tell, Secret Rings and Black Knight share a lot in common when it comes to story, that being the basis of Sonic being transported into a new world and defeat some kind of godly being. The two stories are kind of the same with just a different location based on the legend and lore. So which story is better? Which one kept my attention more? That I give to Secret Rings. The idea of having a fire eating at Sonic's soul the entire game gave the story a bit more of an edge to it, and thanks to that, the mission to gather all the world rings is now much more urgent and gives the story a bit more intensity. The cutscenes really gave this urgency justice. Black Knight had a good story, and the plot twist, while I didn't see it coming, didn't really have a strong impact. It just felt like sudden filler, and Merlina was just a surprise obstacle Sonic had to overcome. Granted, the final boss is pretty cool, and has one of my favorite super forms in Sonic history, but what the game really suffered from was the final cutscene. If you don't get what I mean, just watch.
Have you forgotten who I am? I am the sacred sword Caliburn. I am the one who decides who is worthy of the crown.
So then, you? You are the one and true
King Arthur?
A chosen one plot. What the fuck? So, yeah, because of that, Black Knight kinda dropped the ball at the last minute, which gives Secret Rings the better plot. But what good is a video game without the gaming aspect? This is the best gameplay. Again, like the story, these two games share a lot in common in terms of gameplay. Let's review Black Knight first. The levels in Black Knight run on rails, meaning you can only move in one direction. But in terms of this game, I'll give it a pass. I don't even want to imagine how bad the combat system would have been if Sonic moved around freely. Speaking of the combat, it sucks. Instead of the usual homing attack, Sonic wields a sword, which is a nice gimmick for the first hour and a half, but gets painfully dull, considering you learn all the combos in the first 10 minutes of the game. This is where Secret Rings gets a boost up. Your only attack is the homing attack, and while it's used pretty well in the game, this is where the good things in Secret Rings basically end. Because this game also has a gimmick. The Soul Gauge. You build up your Soul Gauge by gathering white pearls until the gauge turns orange. Once it reaches that, you have two choices of attacks. The Speed Break, which makes Sonic go at Mach 7 speeds, and Time Break, where time slows down. These two abilities are a pain to use. The Speed Break is impossible to control, and you never know what's in front of you thanks to these red lines always flashing at your face. The Time Break is an absolute chore, as the lighting is downright awful and you never see where you're going. Black Knight also has this kind of gimmick, but it's used much better in that game. Black Knight and Secret Rings are Black Knight and Secret Rings are mission-based games, where you're placed on a map with different kinds of missions in order to progress in the game. Black Knight does this much better, as most of the missions are very straightforward in terms of goals. Get from point A to point B, kill a certain amount of enemies, slay a boss, bam, mission accomplished. Whereas in Secret Rings...
This is...
A dinosaur egg?
The boss battles are also very different in the two games. Many of Black Knight's bosses consisted of dragons, King Arthur, and 3 knights from the Round Table, Sir Lancelot, Sir Gawain, and Sir Percival, aka Shadow, Knuckles, and Blaze. Having a spaz attack with the rear remote and blocking a few times will get the job done. Secret Rings is pretty creative when it comes to their boss battles, many of them varying in design and weaknesses. One's a giant scorpion, one's a lava robot, one's a clusterfuck of different animals. The list goes on. But despite being pretty cool looking and having unique abilities, sometimes less is more, and Black Knight's boss battles are overall more fun to play. What the real decider here is the controls. Which game controlled more smoothly and didn't want to make me tear out my own hair? Let's find out. In Black Knight, Sonic controls using the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck, which already is better than Secret Rings, which I'll get to in a minute. This allows Sonic to move around pretty freely despite the game being on rails, and he responds very well with the Remote and Nunchuck. He can jump, he can attack, he can slash his sword, he can block, he can do this, which is kinda cool, and he's overall much more fun to play as. In Secret Rings... oh god. Instead of the Wii Remote and Nunchuck, you control Sonic by holding the Wii Remote sideways, which you tilt forward to make him run and backwards to make him stop and walk backwards. Don't do this unless you really have to. This is Secret Rings' worst aspect. The game controls like utter shit. Sonic is really unresponsive, will flat out stop sometimes, and sometimes completely miss his homing attack. That and combined with the shitty soul gauge, bad level design, and awful missions make this game an absolute pain to play. So with these points in mind, Black Knight takes the win. I'll give credit to Sega for trying something new at Secret Rings, but it just didn't work. Point goes to Black Knight. And now for the final slide. Which game had the best overall look, appeal, and design? This is Presentation.
I told you, I'm not a rat! I'm a hedgehog!
Both games' presentations are done very well thanks to the idea of the storybook games, and each game takes full advantage of this. The thing you might see immediately different to other Sonic games are the cutscenes. In Secret Rings, the cutscenes are done much like a comic, where movement is used to the bare minimum. That and combined with the old burnt scroll look makes it feel like you're watching an old animation, and it's very nice to look at. Black Knight also uses this old style of animation in their cutscenes, but the cutscenes have far more color in them and have a lot more movement. It's a lot more visually pleasing than the more sepia-tone brush cutscenes you see in Secret Rings. The level design takes full advantage of said legend and lore. Because the game is set in Arabian Nights, Secret Rings' levels vary a lot in terms of backgrounds, from sandy temples and lush jungles to stormy seas and skill-filled caves. These different level ideas gave the artists a lot to work with, and you can easily tell that a lot of work was put into them. Whilst Black Knight's only backgrounds are mainly forests, caves, and run-down castles, the levels look absolutely gorgeous, and it suits a Sonic game really well. In terms of character design, both games do a very good job at showing the game's world. Many of the characters in the games are characters from the Sonic cast dressed in either turbans and cloaks in Secret Rings, and weathered armor and blacksmith equipment in Black Knight. I personally think Black Knight's style is a lot more visually pleasing, and it suits the Sonic cast pretty well. They got the design of Tails perfectly. I can totally see him looking like this in medieval times. They also had really good designs for the human characters too. Char and Eraser Jin both had designs that greatly resembled genies and had a lot of detail put into the design. But in terms of design of the human characters, I think Black Knight really takes the cake. I really loved the design of Merlina. She played a very kind, mysterious character, and her design showed that flawlessly. Also, her evil design's pretty cool too. And King Arthur? God damn, King Arthur. This looks like a character that could destroy the world. And finally comes the voice acting. Secret Rings and Black Knight both share a lot of good voice acting, but which did it better? I'd probably have to go with Black Knight on this one, and here's why. Jason Griffith voices Sonic in both games, but to me he really shines in Black Knight. The dialogue is much more Sonic-ish, and his lines never really seemed off, and the dramatic moments really show what Jason can do. Whereas in Secret Rings, he's not awful, but he doesn't really seem that invested. Also, he shows off his brilliant Werehog voice as Darkspine Sonic.
This is your world. Then it's a world that I don't want any part of. How's this for an introduction then?
Many of the side characters in Secret Rings had voices that really irritated me after a while. Eraser Jin's voice wasn't intimidating, he just sounded like someone trying to pull off the tough guy act. And Shara?
Oh, please. Someone tell me that this isn't really happening. Tilting the Wii remote to the left and right will move you in that direction. If you have at least one ring, you can get hit without being hurt. Ah!
Oh my god. But in Black Knight, I loved all the characters' voices. They all suited the characters very well, and everyone sounded very invested. I'd probably say my favorite characters were either Merlina or King Arthur. The voice actors really suited their roles and took full advantage every time they were on screen. King Arthur's voice is just perfect. The smooth but intimidating voice combined with that amazing design was just so awesome. So with all these ups and downs taken into account, the overall winner is Black Knight. It has a good story, good gameplay, and had a great presentation. Now, to be completely honest, I got a bit of enjoyment out of both of these games. They kept my attention for a good few hours, and after completing them both, I was left pretty satisfied. So what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with this video, and what are your thoughts on these games? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear them. My name is Manga Artist, and this has been the first episode of Which is Better?